All right. Good afternoon. My name is Landon Smith. Today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about early jet propulsion systems, mostly what the Third Reich was working on. And this is for Avia 304. It's just going to be a quick presentation, no more than 3 to 5 minutes. So I'll be talking about a couple articles here. Kind of the significance of these articles and kind of like an overview of jet propulsion technology from 39 to 45 on the German side. Now, this isn't to say that the Allies weren't working on jet propulsion or rocket systems. It's just that the Germans had a higher emphasis on these systems. So, pretty much starting off, the HE-178. This is quoted in German work captured by the Science Newsletter 48, number 8. Pretty much the Heinkel 178 was one of the first jet aircraft, if not the first jet aircraft that was actually manufactured and designed. Came on the scene in 1939. The Germans were looking for something that was faster, that could perform better at higher altitude, and something that was easier to manufacture. So something to consider is that the high performance piston engines of yore that you find in, say, an ME 109 or a Focke-Wulf 190. Those were great engines. They're high performance, but with reciprocating engines, they have many more moving parts than a jet engine. I mean, think about the pistons and the crankcase and the valves and the fuel delivery systems and the carburetors, right? Just to name a few. Those are extremely complex systems. The turbochargers, the superchargers, those are all extremely complex systems. Many moving parts of those aircraft in those power plants. So, cool thing about the HE-178 was that it used the first turbojet engine, which is different from a turbofan in the way that it produces thrust just by throwing exhaust gases out the back and using that to propel itself. Now, the HE-178 was fairly simple in design. It had a single jet turbojet engine, and so the advantage there was that it was fairly easy to manufacture, believe it or not. Germans were able to use inferior metals and significantly less moving parts. And the parts weren't very complex either. So the great thing about these aircraft was that because they're so easy to manufacture, because you could use slave labor, you could use again inferior metal, and time to build these aircraft was not very long. Now the downside, as the Science Newsletter number 48 or 48 number 8 talks about, was that even though they're high performance, they're easy to manufacture, and they're fairly cheap. Materials were easy to come by, and they burned a lower grade fuel. JP8 or jet fuel is one of the first derivatives from petroleum refining. Downside was that the TBO on these engines was extremely low. They were highly unreliable. So you get into areas where the ME 109 had a TBO on its engine. I think it was a Mercedes-Benz engine, had a TBO of only 250 hours, which by today's standards, you'd laugh. I think the Mustang had closer to 500 or 600 hours before TBO. But the HE-178's power plant had a TBO of only 25 hours. So after 25 hours, if it made it that far, you'd have to rip these engines off, go through them, or just slap a new engine on. And that was probably more likely because the Germans didn't have much time to maintain aircraft, especially later on in the war when the HE-178 and the ME-262 came on the scene. So they more than likely just put a new engine on. Now, the problem with these new engines, like I said, was reliability. So the operation of these engines was they didn't have FADEC back then. The pilot in air and on the ground was trimming the aircraft or trimming the engine in and of itself for optimal performance. So it was a little bit more complex in that way. But even airborne, they're highly unreliable. And if they made it, they didn't often make it 25 hours. So the ME-262 kind of capitalized on some of the downsides of the Heinkel 178, in that it incorporated two of these engines as opposed to one. So in the probable case that you lose one engine, you'd still have the other engine to probably get you home. but yeah, overall, like we can get into some doctrine too around these engines. I know that for the first year of manufacture, the Me-262, the more successful jet aircraft of World War II, Hitler had a say in how these aircraft were to be used. So the Me-262 was originally designed to be a ground attack fighter, low level. But about a year later on in production, Hitler changed the tune, and he started listening to his generals, and they said it'd be superior in a air-to-air intercept role. So they had twin 20 millimeter cannons. They proved to be very effective against heavy U.S. bombers. And high altitude, which they're flying, the turbines tended to do very well, as opposed to piston-driven engines that required forced induction to get anywhere near the performance of an early turbojet at the time. But yeah, this has been a short overview about this stuff. I've got the annotation, just two of the annotations right here. But yeah, I appreciate you listening to my video, and have a good day. Bye bye.